Hello, members. Tom Morrison here from Nashville, Tennessee. We just got tons of snow this week, which I'm a Florida boy at heart, and was there 35 years. So it has been cold up here. We can see it melting through our windows as we speak. We're excited to hear today on MTI's live webcast, heattreat.net. We're going to talk about some big emotional things of how to get through this time of chaos and do it peace and experience peace, joy, and a lot of satisfaction. We're here with Dr. Rich Marks, but a couple things I want to chat with you about before we get going. If you have any questions you'd like to ask Dr. Marks, you can click down at the bottom of this screen. You can click chat, and up on the right will be a chat box, and I'll be monitoring those and can give those to Dr. Marks. You click in the bottom, type your message, and hit enter, and that message will pop up, and I'll ask Dr. Marks any questions you have. Dr. Marks is great at emotional intelligence in the workplace and just personal emotional intelligence, so we're excited to have him here today. But three big things with MTI you need to be aware of. So the first one is we just launched not too long ago, Quality is Everything in Heat Treating. And we just launched our brand new certificate program called the Heat Treat Quality Specialist Program, that you can go out as 13 courses, 25 hours, 50% off to MTI members, or if you have a corporate subscription, you can get it for free for your people. So the Heat Treat Quality Specialist Certificate Program, you'll want to check that out at mtiacademy.com. Then the second thing is MTI's recent sales forecasting webcast is coming up on February 7th, ITR Economics. The future for many has so much uncertainty to it. And the one great thing about MTI is we bring a lot of certainty with these quarterly webcasts. You're going to tune in to find out the details of that. The link for the webcast will be out there probably by the end of this week, but you can go to heattreat.net, our main website, and you scroll down to upcoming events, and you'll see it'll have there the ITR sales forecasting at heattreat.net, and you'll be able to tap into that on February 7th. And the last thing is the ginormous thing coming up in the spring of 2022 is our MTI spring meeting. We had a great turnout in last year's spring meeting, our fall meeting, and this year our spring meeting is going to be dynamic. We have we have 4 tremendous big sessions for people. And get this, for the fundraiser for the MTI Academy, guess what we have? We have cornhole going on. So all you people out there that don't think you can play cornhole, you're going to find out and you're going to help raise money for scholarships for the MTI Education Foundation. So big things at the spring meetings to be held at the Westin Resort in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Great place on the beach where we're going to learn a lot of big things in heat treating, as well as the future of where we need to be at businesses. So we're excited for y'all to be here today. So let's jump in. So Dr. Rich Marks, Dr. Marks, I'm so excited for him to be here. He is always teaching one of the sessions at our famed Yes Management Training Program. Every Yes grad knows him from 2007 because he's been with us that long. It's been incredible to have him along for the ride. So Dr. Marks, welcome to the MTI webcast.
It is good to be here. It's good to see you, and welcome to all those that are attending.
Yeah, man, it's been so long. I mean, I met you in 2009. I'm sorry, 1995.
Yeah,
it's been a long time. And then you came along for the ride in 2008 when we regenerated MTI's Young Executive Series program, and now it's just a Yes program. When you hear some people that's known it as the Young Executive Series, they think this is only for young people, but it's not. We've had people as old as 72 go in the program. We've had presidents of companies come in the program because they've never really had any formal management training, and most of them have told me this has been life-changing for them. So we're excited that you've helped us make this such a great program. And you may not know this, but the Yes Management Training Program sold out in record time for 2022, and it's already sold out in 2023. So in the summer, we're going to be opening up 2024's program. So really good stuff. So, but today, we're here to talk about this incredible time frame, this incredible thing that we've got going on called the COVID chaos, I call it. So many people have just had a lot of mental issues, just depression and a lot of different things going through their mind, mental anxiety, just because COVID isolated so many people. I know you've always talked about how the #1 really pandemic in America is loneliness. So real quick, give everybody a sense of who Dr. Marks is from your perspective in about 60 seconds. Tell them who you are.
Well, my background is a psychologist and marriage family therapist, and I've done everything from working psych hospitals, managing psych hospitals. I'm a 12-year Navy vet. You probably see a lot of my military stuff up there behind me. I love military history. I love to study leadership, and married 38 years. I have 3 adult children. I'm proud of them. They all went to graduate schools at Ivy League schools and all kind of forging their way in the world. But I grew up in a broken home. So did my wife, and we were kind of committed to learning to do things better than our parents did and not passing on, I call it a generational curse of dysfunction and brokenness, but I also learned that a part of my journey of who I was going to show up as who I am as a leader. And when I got married 38 years ago, as a matter of fact, emotionally I was still a child. And I realized that you can go to all the leadership trainings you want, but if you're an emotional infant, emotional child, emotional adolescent, Tom, and you go to a leadership training, at the end of the day, you still walk out of there as an emotional infant, child, or adolescent.
Right.
Really haven't helped you. And I realized when you look at what's happening place around the country and globally, as a matter of fact, around leadership. My son, when he was at Tsinghua University, which is China's Harvard, last year working on a master's, he called me and told me that these global leaders who are coming to speak to them at Tsinghua University in Beijing, they're saying the same thing over and over. If you want to be a great leader in the future, you better master 2 skills. And here they are: empathy and compassion. Empathy and compassion is the future of leadership. Now, I'm like, Jesse goes, Dad, you've been teaching us that since we were kids, you see? And so I think it's interesting that he was learning over there. You want to be a great leader? Learn empathy and compassion. But isn't that emotional intelligence? It is.
But, Dr. Mark, it's really kind of interesting you say that, because, I know growing up, a lot of leaders are taught by a lot of them by their parents on that. And so many people bring their own personal experiences and their own experiences with their father and mother to the table. And compassion and empathy are 2 huge traits that really aren't taught to a lot of people.
No, as a matter of fact, quite a few years ago, I was part of a national movement with leadership in the workplace. And what you're seeing is that businesses actually lose $6 billion a year because of divorce in the workplace. So we now know that whatever's happening at home plays itself out in the workplace.
Right.
And who you are as a way of being, as my phrase, actually will affect how you are as a leader and how you treat people, particularly those who are subordinate to you.
Right. So let's talk about for a minute. So the last 20 months has been just anxiety driven, crazy driven for a lot of people. A lot of people it's worn. I'm as a leader, it wore on me at times, and I'm one of the most positive people you'll meet. So when you look at what's gone on in society in general, what kind of mental health challenges have you seen through the COVID era with people that you've been talking to?
Well, I was just at a training in Texas, in Austin, where we had about a half a day on this. And the real issues that are increasing through COVID, addictions are up. Suicide is up. Depression is up. And it was predicted that divorces may increase, but actually what you've actually seen, you saw an increase in filing, but we actually haven't seen the increase in following through, which is probably a good thing in my mind. So I'm about healthy relationships and healthy families,
right?
And all aspects of life. So what you are seeing is an increase in depression, an increase in addictions, and those people go to work. They go to work and they take that hurt, that pain, and it plays itself out in the workplace. So we know that businesses lose $6 billion per year because of divorce in the workplace, which is why many years ago, companies like Chick-fil-A and others started offering relationship skills education to their employees. Why? Because they saw that if employees had healthy relationship skills and the home was happy, if you have a happy home, you have a happy work environment, better employee, better productivity, which also leads to greater output, and that's the bottom line: profit in a healthy workplace, healthy work environment.
Right. So speaking to a lot of people who are listening to this, because some of them probably feel that depression, that anxiety and stuff. So when you're in that moment like now, COVID really unpacked and exposed a lot of weaknesses in businesses, the supply chain, just so many things, but also exposed a lot of things in the home. I can remember talking to one person along my journey this last couple of years, and I said, what is the one big thing you learned about yourself the last 6 months? And this is probably 6 months into COVID. And you look down, and you look back up, he says, Tom, my wife and I learned that we hate each other. Because work was a mask over a deeper problem, because they would work, they'd leave and go to work, they would then come home, they'd have dinner, and they'd watch a movie and go to bed, but there was never really any interaction. And COVID forced them to be together at home working remotely for 12 hours a day. And I asked him, I said, so where's that now? He says, we're working on our stuff and we're trying to find that common connection. So at least they were working on it. But COVID really exposed a lot of stuff. So when you're talking to people out there and what people are listening in here, being in that moment of anxiety in the middle of all this, I mean, what are some tips if you would say, if you're feeling like you got anxiety or depression, here's kind of here's a few steps you might want to think about taking or doing to try and help give you some peace?
Well, real quick to the issue of the breakdown in relationships. During COVID, my marriage counseling work and my marriage intensive work doubled.
Wow.
It's still going today. People come from all over the country because COVID exposed the weaknesses, like you just said, but they realize they want to save it, but they don't know how. So I got a couple coming next week from Canada, because it affected the staying home affected everything. And so in one sense, it's kept me busy, on that side of my work. Right.
Right.
And so I think the key for depression is depression is anger that people stuff. All right. When you're stuffing anger, you're going to get clinically depressed long term. But the way the brain works, the brain is wired to avoid pain and pursue pleasure. So if you're angry and you're hurt, then what are you going to do? You don't want to feel that pain. So what do? You medicate it through any form of addiction, be it process addictions or substance addictions. All right. Process addictions may be things like food, pornography, gambling, object addictions, like alcohol, drugs, those kind of things. And so what you're really doing, you're medicating pain. The problem is when we live in that pain, we tend to only see the world through that pain. There is so much research right now, Tom, going on with the brain in gratitude. And what was showing is that one thing that emotionally well people have learned to master is gratitude. Mm-hmm. They don't deny problems in their life. Living a life of gratitude isn't denial. I'm not going to deny there's not problems, but they have the ability to find the positives in the midst of it.
Right.
And what's interesting is brain research shows when you choose to live a life of gratitude, it's much more difficult for the brain to feel anger and fear. Mm-hmm. Fear is related to anxiety and worry, and anger is related to depression. So what we try to teach people is find things to be grateful for. Always look and develop I call it a way of being. Become a person who's grateful. Find ways to be grateful, not in the sense of denial. We're not saying I don't have issues, but I am saying in the midst of it, I'm glad Lou and I are still together. I'm glad that I have a house in my head. I'm glad that we're still doing these things. I'm glad that this is taking place. In the midst of all the changes, I can find things to be grateful for.
And I would assume that one of your number one practical ways to do that is to turn the flipping TV off, because there's so much ungratefulness going on there, and kind of take a deep breath from all that.
I will tell you, I quit watching the news heavy 2 years ago. I would watch the news with all the negativity out there. I found myself getting angry. And I thought, I'm doing this to myself. There's still a lot of good in this world.
Right.
And there's still a lot of greatness in this world. We just saw your new grandson.
Yeah.
That's the beauty that's still in this world, right?
That's a lot to be excited about, for sure.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of the world. And we have to remind ourselves of those things. You see, and I had to quit watching a lot of the news. Then I found myself getting angry. And I can't control it.
Right.
So why would I get myself all worked up over things I have no power to control?
And guess what happens when you get angry at home with all that stuff? Guess where you take it? To the work.
You act it out.
To the work. So,
very much so.
So in your marriage intensive, I know we got probably a number of people in here that are married at any level. And I think your marriage intensives, even if you're a healthy couple, it's good to go through some of those type of things. So if you might unpack just two things that come out of that, you can say, if you're a couple, no matter where you are, these are two things you would want to be doing with each other to help improve what your relationship's about.
One, we do a lot of things in marriage intensive, but in the 1,000-foot view, we actually teach people how to bond and connect and emotionally regulate so that they can create what we call us, a sense of usness in the marriage. Mm-hmm. Never lose the us. It's not about me. It's not about us. Us wins, you both win. So we teach you how to create an usness, how the brain works emotionally from the right side of the brain, which is known as the limbic system, how to bond and connect. There's 10 relational needs. And we talk about those 10 relational needs as it relates to leadership in the Yes One Day training that we do. And then we also teach you then how to communicate and solve problems so that you're always protecting the relationship. You know, what takes maturity is to enter into conflict, Tom, and not destroy the relationship, which requires maturity. And my wife and I learned to do that. So I'm 60 years old now, married 38 years next month, all right? And I'm telling you, I live by what I teach. And I have a strong, healthy, connected relationship. Nobody wants to get married to be miserable, not me.
Right.
You know, but I found that when us is strong, I feel better at work.
And you would equate that usness in the home also to the usness in a team at work, right? So how does that kind of play out? So we're going to get into some leadership issues in a little bit, but so how can leaders create more of an usness when they're leading a team of 4 to 5 people?
You have to become, number one, you must become emotionally healthy yourself, right? We say become a healthy, mature adult. Of course, we talk about that in the leadership training that we do for YES. What is an emotional infant? What is an emotional child? What is an emotional adolescent? And then what does a mature adult look like, all right? And then once you know how the brain works at the emotional relational level, then you lead with that knowledge. You see, you lead with that knowledge so that when you notice someone struggling, you go, hey, you know, they're just needing some appreciation.
Right.
That's all this is about. And so you give them words of appreciation. It releases dopamine in their brain. They think you're the most wonderful boss, and they're energized. So it's learning how the brain works to create connections. And when those connections are made at that emotional relational level, and I have to say this to someone who may be thinking, I was doing a training many years ago, Tom, for some folks at a John Deere franchise up in Wisconsin. I was doing one of my leadership trainings we do there. And one of the guys stopped me as we were talking about these relational needs. And he said to me, he said, this is all touchy-feely stuff, isn't it, Doc? This is all touchy-feely stuff. And I said, what are you saying? He goes, we're engineers in this room. Do you understand me? We're all engineers in this room. And I said, okay. I live by 4 words, Tom, as you well know: goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy, right? So I'm all about respect. So I never give people input without permission. So I asked him a question. I said, can I give you a thought? He said, sure. I said, do you want to be an engineer who treats people with respect, or do you be an engineer who treats people disrespectfully? And the room was real quiet. He goes, I get it. I go, I'm not asking you to not be an engineer. I want you to be an engineer, but don't use that as an excuse to mistreat people.
Right.
Nobody checks their humanity at the door.
Right. So what is the one word, and I hear you say this all the time, what is the one word that separates the mature person who is engaged and the not so mature person?
The one word? Emotional regulation. That's actually 2 words.
Well, before that, there's something. So I want you to real quick unpack for everyone on the call what you know, what you don't know, and what you don't know, you don't know.
Okay.
That gets to the word, and I think many people in here will connect with this analogy.
All right. So everybody can think about it. Think about a big circle. All right. And so if you can, draw a circle in your mind or on a piece of paper, if you got one. And that circle represents all the knowledge that exists in the world. So all the knowledge that would exist in the world would fit into that circle. Now, I would ask you the question, how much knowledge of that knowledge do you think you possess? And the answer is a really small dot. I mean, you think about it, our realm of knowledge is so minute based on all the knowledge that exists out there. However, have you ever noticed, though, folks, that when you're in an argument with somebody, your brain acts like it knows everything. But we just admitted logically, rationally, we don't know much. So we're going to take that realm of knowledge, or that circle, we're going to divide it into some pieces. The first piece are the things you know. So in the realm of knowledge, the things you know. Hopefully you know your gender. Hopefully you know what color your hair is. Hopefully you know where you are right now. There's also a realm of knowledge, things you don't know. Like I know that I don't know heat treating, all right? I know that I don't know how to run a furnace. I know that I don't know quantum physics. You got it? And so in the realm of knowledge are things you know, and there's also things you don't know. And what you know and you don't know is the dot, and it isn't much. But here's how the brain works. Your brain can only create understanding from its realm of knowledge, which is a dot and isn't much. But then the massive area outside of the dot are the things you don't know that you don't know. And then I would ask, well, what's something you don't know? And the answer is, I don't know. It works this way if you're confused. Before you ever heard my name, saw my name, or saw me, you did not know that you did not know me. Why? Because you had no knowledge of me. But the moment you gain knowledge of me, however you gain that knowledge, in that moment, I went from someone you don't know, to today I'm now someone you don't know. And after this hour, you may not want to know me, that'll be a different conversation. You see how it works? And what happens is people aren't teachable, Tom.
Right. That's the word I was getting to.
That's where you want to. Okay. People aren't teachable. And emotional regulation creates teachability, but it comes from humility, right?
Right.
And so you're right. That teachability is the key. I raise my kids to know, you always know mature people, they're teachable. Immature people are not. They think they know everything. They live out of that dot. This is all there is to know. And so what we find is always stay open to new information, because there may be something you didn't know.
Right.
But to do that, you've got to be teachable as a way of being. You got to develop emotional regulation, and that's the evidence of a mature person.
So then take that one step further to the scenario that you always play out, that two people are having a debate, and this happens in the work time all the way, and someone learns something they did not know.
Oh yeah. So I'll use a married example. Okay? It's easier. We can all relate to that.
Right.
Even if you're not married, you're dating someone, you have an argument. So let's say my wife and I are arguing, and in the midst, and you can only argue from your realm of knowledge. I can argue my realm of knowledge, which is a dot, by the way, in that circle. And my wife, her name's Llewellyn, can only argue from her realm of knowledge, which is a dot. And we're both arguing back and forth, but in the midst of the argument, she says something that I didn't know that I didn't know. You ever been there before?
It's new information.
Someone, and they said something you didn't know. And when they said the thing you didn't know, it conflicted with what you knew. And when you learned the thing you didn't know, and it conflicted with what you knew, in that moment, you also knew that you were wrong. What do most people do in that moment when they learn something they didn't know, that conflicts with what they know, and they also know they're wrong? The answer is they get defensive, they double down, they argue. And we go, why? And I always say this way, it's because you're not teachable. You're not teachable. And kind of an example to make it easy for us is, let's say I say to a guy named Bob, I say, hey, Bob, I'm coaching a leader. I said, Bob, did you know that you have an anger problem? He goes, I don't have an anger problem. I go, how do you know? He said, because I know Rick, because he knows what he knows. It's in his dot. And I go, yeah, I got that. I'm asking, how do you know that you don't have an anger problem? Because I know Rick. And then I would say, well, Bob, did you know you do this, this, and this, A, B, and C? He goes, no, I didn't know I do those things. I said, you do. And those things suggest you have an anger problem. I don't have an anger problem. Well, actually, Bob, what you don't know is you do have an anger problem. What you don't know is you are a mean boss. What you don't know, you are inconsiderate. What you don't know is you are hurtful. The issue here isn't whether you are or are not. The issue is your inability or unwillingness, and this is the key phrase, your inability or unwillingness to consider the possibility.
Right.
That what you think you know is something you don't know.
Right.
And that's the power of teachability. I didn't know I was manipulative. I didn't know that I didn't know that I was passive aggressive. I had bosses that knew it. My wife knew it, but I didn't know it. It wasn't in my realm of knowledge because it was blind to me.
So let's speak to people on here that say, you know what, man, I can so relate to that. And I need more than a coach. I might need some professional help. So in the traditional sense, a lot of people put a stigma on seeing a therapist or a counselor, but you've been one all your life and you've helped so many people overstep those hurdles in their life. So real quickly, if you could just encourage people on here, why it's so important to reach out and maybe connect with a therapist or a counselor through their workplace assistance program or just their church or wherever.
Yeah. I got into, I started doing less, quote, psychotherapy many years ago. It moved more into a coaching model. I found it has greater success even with helping marriages.
Mm-hmm.
I'm coaching people what to do different. But what I think the benefit there is maturity research shows can only happen in relationship, people speaking into you. This is why you see such an uptake in people going and getting a mentor or a coach, all right? Those kinds of things. Why? Giving people permission to speak into you. Why? Because there's something in you that says, I want to be a better person. I want to develop myself to be the best that I can be as a person. And that also means emotionally and relationally. And so you find someone who has the skills and abilities to impart that into you. And that's why, for me, I got mentors in my life, and some were some pretty high profile psychologists internationally. I got to know them and became friends with them, and they mentored me. They taught me things. but they also taught me about me,
Right.
who I was and what I could do different and how I could be a better person. So personal development is something that I value. And I think healthy leaders should value personal development, not just leadership development.
Right. So we talked a whole lot about the individual on the
Mhm.
because like you said, you can't, what takes place at home is going to eventually play itself out in the workplace, and you want to have very healthy people at home, which relates a lot to how people are treated at work, because what we have been seeing in studies, as you always say, is people aren't leaving their jobs, they're leaving their bosses or their direct supervisor because what? They create an unhealthy environment for them. So you've done this since 2008 or 9 with Yes, and you've seen all these classes, and you've been a part of Chick-fil-A, Walmart, Blue Cross Blue Shield, some big companies. What are some of the key stepping stones you think that people going into management and leadership should consider about people when they're, what should some of the skills they need to really tap into when they're leading? Because a lot of people are in our industry, they may be a great furnace operator, and now they've been asked because they're the next in line. Hey, Joe, we'd like to promote you to the manager supervisor of all the furnace operators. So what is that person going from the employee doing the technical work, moving into the management, which is a different skill set? What are 5 or 6 key elements you think people should really be tapping into to be able to be the most effective leader they can?
I would say begin to value the soft skills, all right, which are the relational skills. That's a value. I learned something yesterday that I thought was fascinating. I got a phone call from a Chick-fil-A owner-operator here in the country, and she was looking for help many years ago for her marriage. And she called Bubba Cathy, one of the sons of Truett Cathy. And she called him, wrote him on a day looking for help, and he wrote her back. What she didn't tell me until years later, yesterday, was his father had just died. And she said, that man took the time out to give me your name to help me, even though his father had just died.
Right.
She said, that's the quality of leaders I work for. And I went, wow. And I've met Bubba and have been around him, and that's consistent with my experience with him, But where'd that come from? The soft skills. They are people who live by what I call the 4 protectors of a relationship. They are people who've made themselves become these 4 words. They chose to live a life of goodwill, respect, empathy, and humility, or what I now call HREG. H equals REG. Humility equals respect, empathy, and goodwill. You cannot have those 3 without humility. Humility allows those 3. So what my world I teach in our leadership work, if you want to be a great leader, become a person who is a person of goodwill. Be respectful and be caring. You see, that doesn't mean you can't fire people. You can fire people with goodwill.
Right.
You can be respectful. You can be caring when you do it. But that says a lot about who I am.
Right.
Someone said to me once, why do you treat people with goodwill and respect when they disrespect you? I said, the reason I do that has nothing to do with them. The reason I do it has to do with who I want to be.
Right.
That's who I want to be. So I would say the first thing is develop the what I call them the 4 protectors of a relationship. And that means any relationship, employer-employee, employee-employee, parent-child, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Always live a life of goodwill, respect, humility, and empathy in all aspects of your life. Now, it takes time to develop those as a way of being, but that's the first thing I would say. Also, Simon Sinek talks about this a lot of leaders do. Healthy leaders, mature leaders, know how to communicate well. And not just pick up that, put it away.
Right.
It's communicating with respect.
Right.
Communicating that always says, I care. Because great leaders put the focus on the people they lead and less on them, because they understand if the people I lead, if they are their best, then I thrive like crazy.
And I think a key in that is everybody listening in, anybody that watches this at a later date, I'm a decent communicator, not always the best at times, because I get so passionate in my world, but I constantly am going out at least a couple times a month and going onto YouTube and typing in how to be a good communicator, how to skillfully talk to people. And the other big one, because communication is not just talking, it's listening. And listening to employees is a big deal. And there's a great TED talk if you go out to it and say how to get people to listen to you and how to listen. It's great. So I'd encourage everybody on here to really be doing that on an active basis. Is going to YouTube. There's some great TED talks and great just general YouTube videos from experts to teach you how to communicate, the skills of that. And because that's half the battle in leadership, is being able to communicate in a way which includes listening to your employees. Would you agree with that?
Yes. And matter of fact, when you communicate, I always tell people, communicate that always sends a message that I care. You can communicate in a caring way, or you can communicate in an uncaring way.
Right.
Well, how would you know if someone's doing it? And the answer is simple, because brain research shows us. It's tone. Right. See, the brain communicates not just in words. The brain also communicates through sound and body language, facial features, right? This kind of stuff. Also, tone. Matter of fact, the brain research around communication shows us that the brain responds to tone and body language 92%, only 8% to a message. So I tell people, mind your tone, because your tone sends a message to people.
Take a breath before you say that comment, right? And think about how it's going to come out. So tone's one. So let's move into the next thing I want to talk about. So when you look at leaders, what are some of the bad habits and traits that you have witnessed from leaders over the years? Things that they do that you say, look, if there's things you don't want to do in leadership, here's kind of some laundry list of things that you don't want to do.
Make sure if you have any narcissistic traits, get rid of them. I was just at a training and I've read some books. One's called, I encourage you to read this book called Corruptible. And it's the nature of power and how power, you know, that old quote that says power corrupts. Absolutely. What the research actually shows, it actually doesn't. For some people it does, but most people it does not. What happens is people who have a need for power because they want to control others, right, they are drawn to positions of power. They're drawn to position power. But what's called in the mental health field called the dark triad of personality disorder, which are narcissists, Machiavellianism, and psychopaths. Those three are drawn to power positions. Why? Because in power, they can act out.
Right.
Personality disorders, right? And so always make sure that you develop yourself to find balance in life. But always remember, you're human and people are human. We don't check our humanity at the door, you see. And so if there's any narcissistic traits, get rid of them. Because remember, you're a leader, and leaders care about people. But how would they know? It's the way you treat people.
Right.
I've always said it this way. My son is going through this in DC. He's leaving his boss. He's leaving his boss. And he's tired of the way he's being treated. And he's walking away. He's like, I can't do this anymore. I'm tired of the disrespect. And he's talked to them. They just don't care. You see?
Right.
So he put his notice in, and they were shocked that he's going to leave because they value him, you know?
Right.
And so the first thing is, you know, make sure that if you have any selfishness in you, now we're all going to have it on some level.
Right.
Just monitor it. And remember, it's not about me, it's about the team. I call that us.
Yeah.
Not about the team. All right. That's the first thing is, I think the other one, and there's another book I encourage you to read, it's called Dignity and Leadership. Desmond Tutu wrote the foreword to the book, to this psychologist who wrote the book. And her point is that the greatest offense with leaders today in the West is they disrespect other people's dignity. We're all human. We're all human. And because we're human, we deserve to be treated with dignity.
Right.
Don't violate another person's dignity. I think those are the biggest things that if you can master that by becoming a healthy, caring person, you can learn leadership skills for sure. But when you set those on top of emotional maturity, emotional wellness, emotional intelligence, whichever word you want to use, I'm going to tell you something. People are going to stick around you for a long time.
Right. So let's move into another segue that I think we teed up very, very well in terms of how we treat people. So how we treat employees in a lot of sense, even people around us, but specifically employees I want to get in for managers that are watching this or future managers, is we tend to react to how employees treating us, employees acting out in some way. and we automatically think that person's got a problem. And so I know you've talked in Yes about someone that has a problematic behavior versus an unmet need. So unpack those two different things and how they mesh. And how do you kind of identify that so you know what to do? Because I've seen many people who, like you just said, I've seen people acting out during the day, but it's because somebody passed away that was close to them, or they didn't get respect from their father, whoever. But kind of unpack those two things and help people online how to, because I know a lot of that goes on in the workplace.
Yeah. I was just at a training in Austin, Texas for pastors as leaders. And they released some data, national data that they did on pastors. The number one complaint of pastors during COVID is they're being mistreated by somebody or some people in their church, right? And so I asked the researchers after they made the presentation, I said, these pastors that you report are complaining that people are just, basically discounting them, creating problems for them. Did you ask them, did they create the problems? They went, well, no. I go, wouldn't you want to know that? Wouldn't you want to know that?
Right.
You see, they're still human. Maybe they've created some of these problems as well. So I the idea behind the needs is that all human behavior is motivated. Behavior does not happen in a vacuum. Everything we do is motivated by what we call the pain of an unmet need. And we're born with these needs, and they'll be with you to the day you die. And those needs must be met, just like food, air, water, and shelter. We refer to them as relational needs. And if those who went to Yes or who go to Yes will get a sense of what they are, we call them cares. And there's 5, and here they are. All humans have a need for comfort. We have a need for attention. We have a need for acceptance. We have a need for approval. We have a need for appreciation. We have a need for affection. We have a need for respect. We have a need for encouragement, security, and support. And what happens is when our needs are not being met, that creates pain in the brain. The brain doesn't want pain. The brain wants pleasure. So people start to act out the pain of unmet relational needs in what I call unhealthy ways. So if I can unpack a little bit more, then let me help you understand the power of needs then. So let's say that Tom hasn't eaten in 5 days, all right? That'd be a biological need for appetite. If he hasn't eaten in 5 days, then the biological need for appetite is unmet. That means he's going to be in pain. We call it hunger pains. His brain sends a signal to the body going, hey, the need for appetite is not met. We got to have something to eat. The pain is a signal that there's a need not being met. So if we give Tom a bunch of hamburgers to satisfy the unmet need for appetite, the question is, would it work? The obvious answer is yes. Here's kind of like the 1,000-foot view, folks. Literally, the moment he takes the first bite into a hamburger, the moment he takes that first bite, his brain releases a neurochemical called dopamine. Dopamine is a mood shift into pleasure. So now he has this mood shift into pleasure. He feels better. He finishes all the hamburgers. He's no longer hungry. He moved out of pain into pleasure because pain always pursues pleasure. But let's change it up and say we don't give him hamburgers. Let's say we give him a bunch of rat poison to satisfy the unmet need for appetite. Would rat poison satisfy an unmet need for appetite? The answer is yes, it would. Again, if he takes the first bite of the rat poison, the brain goes, oh, you're eating something, and the brain releases dopamine. Either way, he gets a dopamine release.
Right.
It's a mood shift into pleasure, finishes all the rat poison, he's no longer hungry. The problem, though, as you well know, Tom, is the rat poison, though it satisfies the need, unmet need, it's going to create more pain.
Right.
Same thing with relationships. Bad love is better than no love. Negative tension is better than no tension.
Right.
You see? And if I don't feel appreciated by my boss, then people start to act out what I call rat poison ways.
Right.
To get appreciation. What if I was the kind of boss that knew how to lead with that and knew that this is how the brain works relationally? So if I see an employee complain about something, I could say, hang on a minute. Are you saying that you're sensing that you're not getting appreciation for the project you did? Yes. You always get a yes out of them. And you go, well, what have we done to send you that message? You can have a conversation with them. Now, someone may be thinking, well, I'm not a therapist. I'm not talking about being a therapist. I'm talking about being human.
Right.
I'm talking about being human. I can engage at that level of conversation with them without being a therapist. Why? because I care about the person. Can I repeat? Somebody wrote, can I repeat the needs? Yes, here they are. What I would say, write down CA to the 5th RES squared. So here they are. And the acronym is CARES. The C is comfort. Then there's 5 A words: attention, acceptance, appreciation. Appreciation is about what I do. Then there's approval. Approval is about who I am. And then affection. Then RES squared. R is respect. We all need encouragement. And the 2 S words are, we all need security. Security in that I'm secure in this relationship. Not that there's, deadbolts on the door, money in the bank. And last is support. Support. My biggest fights with bosses over the years was around respect. Mm-hmm. You see, and the idea is that of those 10 relational needs, Heather, I hope you got all those.
Well, Ryan, Greg, just so you know, I just posted out because we record this. It'll be sent out to our online forum. I got the copy of those 10 that you've given yes before. I'm just going to put a link to those with
wonderful.
So they've got
great.
That.
Because that actually has a definitions form as well.
Yeah.
So we can give that. And if you want to go in depth to it, come to the yes seminar that we do, and we'll take you in depth to it. If not, I got some videos you can watch. Just email me, and I'll send you a couple of my YouTube videos that kind of talk about it as well, so you can learn it early if you need to. So anyways, we'll so when those needs are met, we feel valued. When their needs are not met, you feel unvalued. It's real simple.
Right.
It's not science of the brain.
It's
how you treat people.
I think one of the key phrases that I've learned in my life, especially in an element where you manage numerous people or you just engage with numerous people in your work life, is one phrase. Everybody has something good. Even the most hard-nosed employee still has something in them that is good. And what I try and do is recognize that, and somewhere I pick my moment where it's the right moment, and you say, you know what, Rick, you know what I like about you? And they're going to go, what? And you tell them. And whenever you do that, what I've experienced is that dopamine you talk about, and all of a sudden that person that typically walks around with a mean look gets a little bit of a smile because they've been recognized and gotten that level of support that they need, at least emotionally. So that's one of my biggest takeaways I've had in my life of managing stuff, is always pick something good about somebody and say, you know what I like about you? And they ask the question, what? You just tell them and say, man, I appreciate how you do that all the time. And it's just a good way to send that message.
Yeah, and Tom, as you know, the daily touch point skill that we teach, which is a confiding skill, it's a connecting skill, and we encourage managers to use that when you start a meeting. So rather than just starting a meeting, say, listen, we're going to do a touch point. Everybody share something you're grateful for, something you appreciate. And I can go, Tom, I really appreciate the fact that, last week you stayed late and get that project done. Give the guy a dopamine shot. Whenever you share an appreciation or gratitude with someone, you give them a dopamine shot. You see, we're all looking for it. The brain's wired for it. So I always tell people, hey, if you're a manager, give your people dopamine shots.
Right.
Always share things. Always look for things to be grateful for and appreciate about them.
Well, it is interesting. I do that here at MTI. I ask a couple of things. What is something that you appreciate about something somebody in the office did for you, and that's a great time. And the other thing is, and what is something that you appreciate in general, or something that you have done differently for a member that you felt made a difference for them? Because people want to know they're making a difference every day in their work life. It's just not work; it's making a difference. So I think that's another thing businesses can do as well.
And this is the power, and the research is showing around being grateful, that when you're a grateful person and you share those gratitudes, those appreciations with others, people get inspired in that moment.
Right.
When I know that I'm not being taken for granted, that I do something that has value, that has value to the team, has value to the company. You see, and that creates what's called engagement. And what is engagement? Right. Engagement means I'm emotionally invested. What we're actually finding is more and more employees they're disengaged. They're not emotionally invested. They go to work, do what they have to do minimally, do the minimum that they do, and they leave. You see, it's emotional engagement.
Right.
Which means I feel so valued that I am emotionally attached to the mission, to the team, and I'll go over and above. I remember it was Lieutenant General Anthony Zinni. There was a book written by him about his life as a Marine Corps general. He retired many years ago as a CENTCOM 3-star General Marine Corps. I saved his book because of one paragraph in the last chapter. And here's essentially what he said. He said, I went to hundreds of leadership trainings as a Marine Corps officer from Vietnam until he retired. He said, not one of them taught me the core principle of great leaders. Not one of them taught me I had to love the people that I lead. And when the people that I lead knew that I loved and cared about them, I would get 150% out of those Marines. But if they didn't believe that, I would get the minimal.
You know, Ken Kington, who you know very well, he's actually done some comedy stuff for us at MTI meetings. He also does some relational training. And he said he did a presentation at MTI chapter meeting years ago that had 3 things. That every employee is asked, and even customer, they're asking 3 things of you when they're interacting with you. One, they're asking, can I trust you? If I can trust you, then I can go to the next level. The next thing they ask is, do you care about who I am and my needs? You know, instead of just trying to sell me something, do you actually care to help me? And a third thing is, will you do it with excellence? He said, if you can do all 3 of those and say yes to them and mean it, he said, you're going to have people in the palm of your hand wanting to be around you, which kind of leads, it's kind of everything that you've said here today in 3 short term. So
yeah, it kind of goes, I was going to say, it goes along with what I always teach in terms of, you know, my psychologist side. All humans have to have 4 questions answered early in life. And the 4 questions are, and they're answered by your parents ultimately. Do I have value?
Mm-hmm.
Do I matter?
Mm-hmm.
Am I loved and lovable? Or you can change the word to, am I cared and cared for? And do I have a purpose? You see, and when we believe that we have value, that we matter, that we're loved and lovable, and that we have purpose, and we really believe that in ourselves, these people thrive. When they don't believe that, they will act out the pain of that, even at work, in order to feel valued, to feel that they matter, to feel that you care, and to have a sense that they have a purpose there.
See, I think that's something that everybody's asking at work, specifically the younger generation, because they're so purpose driven. I mean, they're the most cause oriented group in our history. And when you say those 4, I think that those are 4 things that every young person is actually asking as well. So we've talked about we've talked about kind of moving through the chaos of COVID emotionally. We've talked about individuals. We've talked about leaders. So when leaders are then identifying and kind of see they've got an employee that just doesn't seem to be all there, that there's not something right, something's not clicking, whether their productivity's gone down or they're treating people wrong, kind of speak to how, in a simple sense, an employer and a manager cannot be their counselor. That's out of their realm, but they can coach them to get to a conclusion. And the conclusion may be that, hey, we've got an employee assistance program that can get you someone that can really help you get through this. So what would you say to people as leaders, how to kind of identify and help employees go from some place that's not peaceful to a place of peace, or at least getting help for peace?
I would say we're not counselors. However, I would argue that a good leader becomes a mentor, mm-hmm. and that they care about what's going on. I have a story for this. Many years ago, my brother Don is a level 5 leader. It is based on Jim Collins's work, right? On leadership. He is that highest level of emotional intelligence. And many years ago, he had an employee that was, nobody on the team liked him. And he broke some rules, and the 2 managers oversaw him, were him fired, went to my brother and said, we want him fired. He was a C-suite level guy. And Don said, before you fire him, I want to talk to him. He brought the guy in, and the guy thought Don was going to fire him. And Don said, let me tell you how you come across. And Don was real open with him. This is how you come across. This is how you treat people. He said, I understand you didn't used to be this. What happened? What changed in your life? And the guy, angry, said, you really want to know? And he began to tell Don about his wife having an affair 5 years earlier. She divorced him. He didn't know how to handle it because now he's a single dad.
Right.
Started drinking, became an alcoholic. He's been in recovery for a year, but he can't get past the anger. And Don said to him, now I understand. It makes sense to me. And Don said, all right, you were going to be fired today if we couldn't have a good conversation. He said, here's what we're going to do. You can't go back to your team. You've lost that. I need a programmer over here. You can have that job. You report to me. But here's what you're going to do. You're going to go talk to this guy named Dr. Rick Marks. He's going to help you. You're going to do whatever he tells you to do. And when you come to work, you will smile, whether you like it or not. And that guy called me. I spent some time with him, working with him, got him to do some things. Now we're about 6 years later, he's become a leading employee there.
That's awesome.
Because manager cared enough to find out the why.
Right.
He never went to therapy role, but he wanted to know the why. That created compassion. And Don said, well, then here's what's going to happen. And then the guy could choose it or not choose it. If he chose not to do it, then Don would say, well, there's a door, you know, I hope you can work through it. And I think that's really the key there, is that we just send a message. If someone's acting out, bring them in, go, tell me what's going on. Help me understand it. What's happened? And I always say to leaders, and it's our teaching we do on perspective, ask yourself this question before you write them off. To any degree, to any level, is their perspective right?
Right.
And if it is, you must honor that degree to that level, that they are right. We all have a perspective, and all perspectives have an element of truth and an element of error. Don't discount a person's perspective because there's an element of truth to their perspective. Always honor and respect it. You don't have to agree with it. That's the key. I have to agree with your perspective, but I can't honor it.
Well, I was going to ask you what would one final word of encouragement be, but you just took it right out of my lips. You just said it right there. That was awesome. So, Dr. Marks, I thank you today for just being with us. We love having you.
My pleasure.
People say every year they love the craziness and the fun and the excitement of the core group, but your sessions are so in depth and get to the heart of why people are who they are. That they always say that your session is one of the most meaningful and great sessions they go to. So, thank you for helping us impact 30 to 35 managers every single year in this program. You've made a huge difference in this industry in particular.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate our friendship, brother, all these years and the ability to just serve your industry. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison. Members, we love you and we're here for you. Always go to heattreat.net if you have any questions. Remember, in February, we've got our next sales webinar coming up, sales forecast webinar on February 7th. And our next Heat Treat Live from this is going to be in February. And you can just go to heattreat.net, scroll a little bit down, and you'll see the upcoming events. And all those webinars, as well as all of our meetings, are located right there. But you have a great day and a great week. And you're not just strong, you're MTI strong. Y'all have a great year. See you next month.